Hi, it's Chuck from Osprey, and today we're going to touch on customers and Osprey Point of Sale. There are multiple ways to utilize customer information in Osprey Point of Sale. We're going to touch on a couple of the basics today. By no means is this an exhaustive list of how to do everything and what all that can be done. For that, you should review the Osprey Point of Sale manual. This is just more of a high-level overview to give you an idea of some of the things that can be done. Obviously, one of the things that needs to be done if you're going to deal with any kind of customer information is to actually collect customers for transactions. There are multiple ways to do that. We're going to look at a couple of them today. The first and generally most common is to prompt for the customer at the beginning of a sales transaction, which is what I'm going to do here. First thing I'm going to do is sign in. The system is set to prompt for a customer. I'm defaulting to customer last name. There are multiple lookup methods: last name, customer phone number, Osprey Point of Sale account number, member card number, and driver's license number. As I said, the system here is set to prompt for last name. However, I can hit enter to cycle through each of the available options to choose the easiest one for me. In which case, we're going to go with last name. I'm going to enter part of a last name, ABE, and choose enter. That will bring up a list of all customers that match that pattern. In this case, there's 2. If I hit escape and go back and typed in DAV, for example, as you can see, we have quite a few Davises in the system. If I hit escape and simply typed in D, we would have the Davises as well as the Drakes. So I'm going to go ahead and go back to my original example of ABE, which gives me 2 sample customers, Kimmy and Lori. From here, I can choose a customer, which I'm going to choose Kimmy, and hit enter. And as you can see, she's been assigned to this transaction. At this point, I can go ahead and proceed as normal. Ring up items, total the items out, and the transaction is complete. Now, if I didn't want to look up the beginning of the transaction because the customer wasn't interested in it or whatever the reason is, this could be turned off so you wouldn't see the default prompt. Or I can hit escape to bypass it unless the system is set for compulsory lookup, which is an option that will be touched on in the separate configuration video. In my case, I'm going to go ahead and bypass it, and at this point I'm ready for a regular transaction. However, if I accidentally bypass it or I'm not prompted at the beginning of the transaction and I do want to assign a customer, there is a function key that can be set up, which will also be covered in that configuration video, called Identify Customer. This functions basically the same way as the pre-sale lookup does. However, there is one additional parameter that allows me to have a different default lookup method. In this case, mine is the same. It's last name, so I'm going to go ahead and do what I did before. And again, we have my same 2 customers, so I'm going to choose Kimmy again. And as you can see at the bottom, she's again assigned to this transaction, and the transaction can proceed as normal. There are other ways to assign a customer to a transaction. If you're using a special function such as a house charge or a layaway, the system obviously needs to have a customer assigned to it. You can also do things like assign compulsory customer selection to a media key. For example, if you're doing badge charging in a hospital environment, you may not want to collect customer information on your typical cash transactions because they're patients or relatives of patients that come and go. However, if it's an employee and you need to track these charges for payroll deduction purposes, you obviously want that information, so we could set that flag on a media key as an example. Please review the manual for more options on that. Now, since we've actually collected this customer information, what can we do with it? Well, one of the things we can do is we can look up their purchases if the system is configured to do so. That will also be covered in a separate video, but for this system it is configured to do so. So if I choose Kimmy again, make sure she's highlighted, and I hit F3 for review history, it'll bring me up with the history screen. By default, the system's going to go back 90 days. I could click on date and change the date to go back further. I could choose to filter by department or by item group. In this case, I'm not going to do so. I'm going to simply search for her item history. When I click on search, I can see everything she's bought that falls within that history, which it all happens to be today. Total of $708 and 12 items. No discounts or markdowns, and here's the actual individual line items that she bought. So if this were longer than a screen, again, I can scroll up or down just as I could the customer window. The other things I can do from here is I can simply click View to view her information. There's multiple pages of information, such as her name, address, city, state, phone number, etc. If we go to the next page, we have classifications and free fields which can be assigned. That is done in back office as far as the setup of these, and that will be touched on in a separate video as well. I can also update her as a customer, so if maybe her zip code had changed, I can come in here and edit the zip code. I can do so with the physical keyboard, or I could do so with the virtual keyboard. So let's say her city changed. I can click on the virtual keyboard. The default value that was already in her record will come up. I can simply type over the top of it. So in this case, it's New Bedford. That's been updated. And then that's that. If I wanted to assign her to a category, I could also do so. So I can save her record, and that will be associated. Now, let's go ahead and no seal and get out of here and bring her back up. The other thing I could do is if I didn't find her when I searched in, I could go ahead and hit F6 to add a new customer. And again, same screen, I go through here and I add the information. First and last name are really the only things that are required, but obviously the more information that you collect, the more information you have, such as generating mailing lists, sending emails, those kind of things. So I'm going to go ahead and cancel out of that. Now, let's say I am prompting for customer information each transaction and I don't want it. Again, unless I'm using compulsory customer information, which most sites do not use, I can simply hit the escape key to bypass that. And as you can see, there's no customer at the bottom, and I can go ahead and ring up the transaction as I see fit. So that's a kind of basic glance at how to utilize customers at Osprey Point of Sale. Please be on the lookout for more videos on how to actually configure some of these options, as well as some of the back office functionality that can be done with the customer list. Thanks.